The bonfire crackled against the October wind, sending sparks spiraling toward a moon so full it looked ready to split the sky open. Maya stood at the edge of the clearing, her borrowed dress too thin for the mountain cold, her bare feet already numb against the stone circle where they'd told her to wait. She shouldn't be here. Everyone knew it. The whispers had started the moment she'd stepped into the clearing, a human girl among the daughters of pack bloodlines that stretched back centuries. The other girls stood in a perfect line, their faces painted with ceremonial marks, their eyes bright with anticipation. Maya's face was bare. No one had offered her the traditional paint. No one had explained what any of this meant. Did they actually bring her? Someone muttered from the crowd. It's symbolic, another voice answered, barely suppressing a laugh. Every 7th year, they choose a human. It's tradition. But the Alpha never actually... Shh, it's starting. The drums began, deep and rhythmic, vibrating through the ground and into Maya's bones. She'd been in Crescent Hollow for 3 months, a temporary job at the town's only diner, a cheap room above the hardware store, a plan to save money and leave before winter. She'd kept her head down, served coffee to locals who watched her with eyes that saw too much, and ignored the strange pull she felt every time she drove past the forest road that led to the mountains. Then yesterday, Mrs. Chen from the bakery had appeared at her door with the dress, and an expression that allowed no argument. "You've been chosen for the lunar offering," she'd said, as if that explained anything. "It's an honor. You'll stand with the others tomorrow night. Don't ask questions. Just try to look presentable." Maya had wanted to refuse. Should have refused. But something in Mrs. Chen's eyes, worry, pity, had made her nod instead. Now, as the drums grew louder and the Alpha's council emerged from the tree line, Maya understood she'd been brought here as a joke. A human placeholder. The girl who didn't belong. Put on display to make the tradition look authentic before the real ceremony began. She caught sight of her reflection in a polished ceremonial shield propped against a stone, her dark hair wild from the wind, her hazel eyes too wide, her olive skin unmarked and ordinary next to the Daughters of Wolves. She looked exactly like what she was, an outsider who'd stumbled into something ancient and dangerous and completely beyond her understanding. "The Alpha approaches," someone announced, and the entire clearing fell silent. Maya felt him before she saw him. It started as a pressure in her chest, a sudden difficulty breathing, like the air itself had become heavier. Then a pull, sharp and undeniable, tugging at something behind her ribs. Her hands trembled. Her heart kicked into a rhythm that matched the drums exactly. He emerged from the shadows between the trees, and Maya's knees nearly buckled. She'd seen him once before. From a distance, a tall figure getting out of a black truck outside the diner, his presence enough to make every conversation stop mid-sentence. But up close, with firelight catching the sharp planes of his face and moonbright eyes that held something far older than his 30-some years, he was devastating and terrifying. Cale Thorne, Alpha of the Nightshade Pack. A man whose name was spoken in whispers even among his own people. He moved through the crowd like a force of nature, his dark coat billowing behind him, his expression carved from ice. The other girls straightened, hope and desire naked on their painted faces. Maya tried to make herself smaller, invisible, wondering if she could slip away into the trees before anyone noticed. Then his eyes found hers. The world stopped. For 3 heartbeats, Cale Thorne stared at Maya across the firelit clearing with an expression she couldn't read, shock, perhaps, or recognition, or fury. His hands clenched at his sides. Something flickered across his face, too fast to name, before his features went blank again, colder than before. He looked away, deliberately, completely, and somehow, that dismissal hurt worse than any insult the crowd had whispered. The ceremony began. An elder stepped forward, speaking in a language Maya didn't know, while Cale walked the line of waiting girls. He stopped before each one, studying them with clinical detachment. Some he touched a hand to the shoulder, a brush of fingers against a wrist. Pack law, Maya guessed. Some kind of test. When he reached Maya, he didn't stop. He walked past her as if she were empty air, as if the pull she still felt thrumming between them was purely her imagination. The crowd's laughter was soft but unmistakable. Maya's face burned. She'd known she was here as a joke, but having him confirm it by refusing to even acknowledge her presence carved something hollow in her chest. The elder called for the final blessing. Cale stood at the center of the circle, his profile sharp against the bonfire, his jaw tight with something that might have been anger or restraint. "The Alpha has chosen," the elder announced. "The moon recognizes." "No." Cale's voice cut through the clearing like a blade. He turned, and this time when his eyes found Maya, they burned with something wild and barely controlled. "The ritual is complete," he said, his tone flat, final. "There is no bond. There is no..." He stopped mid-sentence, his entire body going rigid. His eyes widened, just slightly, before fury overtook every other expression. He looked at Maya like she'd betrayed him, though they'd never spoken a single word. The elder gasped. "Alpha, your mark." "No," Kyle snarled, but his hand had already risen to his neck. Where silver light was beginning to trace a pattern beneath his skin, ancient symbols that matched nothing Maya had ever seen, spreading like frost across his throat. The crowd's whispers exploded into chaos. Maya couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't understand what was happening as Kyle stalked toward her with predatory grace and barely leashed rage. He stopped inches away, close enough that she could see the war raging behind his ice-bright eyes. "This isn't possible," he said, so quietly only she could hear. His voice was gravel and midnight and something that made her blood sing. "You shouldn't, I can't." The mark on his neck flared brighter, and Maya, who understood nothing about pack law or moon magic or destiny, felt an answering heat bloom across her own collarbone, searing and undeniable. Kale's hand shot out, gripping her wrist with desperate strength. "No," he said again, but this time it sounded like a plea. The bond snapped into place between them, like a chain forged from starlight and inevitability. And the Alpha King, who had clearly spent years building walls against this exact moment, looked at Maya with devastation and rage and terrible, unwanted recognition. "Run," he whispered, his grip already loosening. "Run, and never come back." Then he turned and disappeared into the forest, leaving Maya marked, bonded, and utterly alone before a pack that looked at her now with shock, resentment, and something that tasted like threat. Maya didn't run. She should have. Every instinct screamed at her to flee into the trees, to put distance between herself and the clearing where hundreds of eyes now tracked her every breath. But her legs wouldn't move, wouldn't obey, because the place on her collarbone where the mark had appeared was still burning with silver fire that felt like frostbite and fever all at once. The elder recovered first, his weathered face shifting from shock to something harder. "The human bears the Luna mark," he said, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent crowd. "The bond has been witnessed. The moon has made a mistake." A woman's voice, cold and sharp as January ice. She emerged from the line of council members, her silver hair gleaming in the firelight, her age impossible to determine. Kale rejected the bond. "We all heard him. Whatever this is, it's incomplete, invalid. The mark doesn't lie, Morgana." The elder's tone held warning. "You know the laws as well as I do. Laws written for our kind, not for this." Morgana's eyes raked over Maya with open contempt. A human with no lineage, no training, no understanding of what she's stumbled into. How convenient that she appears in our territory just before the lunar offering. How very convenient. The implication hung in the air like smoke. Maya's throat tightened. I don't even know what just happened. Mrs. Chen told me to come, and I thought, Mrs. Chen is human." Another council member cut in, a man with scars crossing his face like old claw marks. She wouldn't have known the true purpose of tonight. Someone else orchestrated this. Someone who wanted to destabilize our Alpha. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, speculation turning to suspicion. Maya caught fragments outsider, trap, rival packs, and felt the mood shifting from shock to hostility. The other girls who'd stood in the offering line now watched her with undisguised hatred, their painted faces twisted with envy and rage. "I didn't do anything," Maya said, hating how her voice shook. "I didn't ask for this. I don't even understand what this is." "The Luna Bond," the elder said quietly, and something in his tone made the crowd settle slightly. "The rarest of mate bonds, one that hasn't manifested in our pack for 3 generations. When an Alpha's true mate appears, the moon itself marks them both. It cannot be forced. It cannot be faked." He paused, his ancient eyes studying Maya with disturbing intensity. "And it cannot be broken." "Kale broke it," Morgana snapped. "He rejected her. We all witnessed. He rejected the bond," the elder corrected. "Not the mark. The mark has already taken root. The question now is whether he'll accept what fate has given him, or whether he'll fight it until it destroys them both." Maya's hand flew to her collarbone, where the burning had subsided into a constant, thrumming awareness. She could feel it now, not just the mark, but something deeper. A thread connecting her to something vast and wild, and currently running through the forest like a wounded animal trying to escape a trap. She could feel his rage, his fear, his desperate, clawing need to sever whatever tied them together. It hurt worse than the mark itself. "Take her to the holding house," Morgana commanded, gesturing to 2 massive men who emerged from the shadows. "Until Kale returns and the council determines what to do with her. She stays under guard, for her own protection, of course." The way she said protection made it sound like a threat. Maya took a step backward, her bare feet sliding on cold stone. "You can't just imprison me. I haven't done anything wrong." "You bear our Alpha's mark," the scarred council member said, not unkindly. "That makes you pack business now, whether you intended it or not. The holding house is for your safety. There are those here who would harm you simply for existing as a complication to their own ambitions." His eyes flickered toward the furious girls still standing in their ceremonial line. "Trust me when I say you don't want to be alone tonight." The two guards approached, and Maya realized she had no choice. No allies, no understanding of the rules governing this nightmare, no way to reach her car or her room or anything familiar. She was trapped in a world that had claimed her without permission, marked by a man who'd looked at her like she was his greatest mistake. As the guards led her away from the clearing, she caught sight of Mrs. Chen standing at the crowd's edge, her face pale with what looked like genuine shock. Their eyes met for a brief moment, and the older woman mouthed something that might have been, "I'm sorry," before the trees swallowed Maya's view. The holding house turned out to be a small cabin at the edge of pack territory, simple but sturdy, with a single room containing a bed, a fireplace, and windows reinforced with something stronger than glass. One guard stationed himself outside the door. The other remained by the window, his expression unreadable. "Can I at least know what happens now?" Maya asked, wrapping her arms around herself against the cold that had seeped into her bones. The guard by the window, younger than the other, with kind eyes that looked almost sympathetic, hesitated before answering. "The Alpha will return when he's ready. He'll have to face the bond eventually. They always do. And if he doesn't? If he keeps rejecting it?" The guard's expression darkened. "Then you'll both suffer until one of you breaks or dies. The Luna bond isn't a gentle thing. It demands acknowledgement. The longer he fights it, the worse the pain becomes for both of you." As if summoned by his words, Maya felt a sharp stab of agony lance through her chest, not her pain, but his, echoing across whatever impossible connection now tied them together. She gasped, doubling over, and distantly sensed Kale somewhere in the mountains, raging against the same bond that was currently trying to tear them both apart. "Get some rest," the guard said quietly. "You'll need your strength." When Kale Thorne finally stops running, the real test begins. But Maya couldn't rest. She sat on the edge of the bed as night deepened outside, one hand pressed against the silver mark that wouldn't fade, feeling the pulse of a bond she'd never asked for, connecting her to a man who wanted nothing more than to be free of her. And in the distance, she swore she heard a wolf howling at the moon, a sound filled with fury and anguish, and something that felt terrifyingly like grief. Maya didn't sleep. How could she, when every hour brought fresh waves of emotion that weren't her own? Anger that tasted like copper and ash, grief so profound it felt like drowning, and underneath it all, a bone-deep exhaustion that made her own body ache in sympathy. The bond, she was learning, was a cruel teacher. Dawn came slowly, painting the mountains in shades of gold and shadow. The guard by the window had changed shifts sometime during the night. Now a woman with iron-gray hair stood watch, her face carefully neutral. The one outside the door remained, a silent reminder that Maya was both protected and imprisoned. She'd tried the door once, near midnight. It wasn't locked, but the guard had simply raised an eyebrow and asked, "Where exactly do you plan to go?" He was right. She had nowhere to run. Her car was still parked behind the diner in town, her belongings in a room she couldn't reach, her entire life before last night feeling like something that had happened to a different person. The mark on her collarbone had stopped burning, but the silver tracery remained visible against her skin, an intricate pattern of symbols that seemed to shift slightly when she wasn't looking directly at them. Ancient wolf script, she assumed, though she couldn't read it. Couldn't understand what the moon had written on her body without her consent. A knock at the door made her jump. The female guard opened it to reveal the elder from last night, looking even more ancient in the morning light. He carried a tray with bread, cheese, and tea that smelled of herbs Maya couldn't name. "You need to eat," he said simply, setting the tray on the small table. "The bond takes energy to maintain. You'll make yourself sick if you don't keep your strength up." Maya didn't move from the bed. "Where is he?" The elder's expression softened slightly. "Still running. He's been in wolf form since he left the clearing. He's gone deep into the northern territory, where the old borders meet the wild lands." "Why?" The word came out smaller than she'd intended. If this bond is so inevitable, so impossible to break, why is he fighting it so hard? The elder lowered himself into the room's only chair, with the careful movements of someone whose bones remembered too many winters. "Do you know anything about Kale Thorne? About what made him Alpha?" Maya shook her head. His father was Alpha before him, a good leader, strong and fair. Kale was being groomed to take over, as is our way. Then, 7 years ago, a sickness came to our pack. Not a disease of the body, a curse. born from old pack rivalries and darker magic than most wolves dare touch. The elder's voice dropped. It targeted the Alpha's bloodline specifically. Kale's father died first, then his mother, then his younger sister, who was only 16. Maya's breath caught. The grief she'd felt through the bond suddenly made terrible sense. Kale was 25 when he became Alpha of a pack in mourning, a pack that had lost faith in the moon's protection. He rebuilt everything through sheer will and iron control. He made the Nightshade pack stronger than it had been in generations, but he did it alone. The elder met her eyes. He vowed never to take a mate, never to have children, never to give the curse if it still lingered another target. He's held that vow for 7 years. And then I showed up, Maya whispered. And then the moon marked you both, breaking the one promise Kale made to himself and to the memory of everyone he lost. The elder stood slowly. He's not rejecting you, child. He's trying to protect you from the fate he believes awaits anyone who gets too close to him. Before Maya could respond, a commotion erupted outside. Raised voices, running footsteps. The door burst open, and Morgana strode in, her expression thunderous. He's challenged the bond, she announced. Kale has invoked the trial of severance. The elder went pale. That's forbidden. The cost. He's Alpha. He can invoke any old law he chooses, no matter how archaic. Morgana's eyes cut to Maya. The trial of severance allows an Alpha to attempt breaking a mate bond through 3 tests of will, body, and spirit. If he succeeds, the bond dissolves. If he fails. She smiled, cold and sharp. The bond strengthens beyond any possibility of resistance, and he'll have no choice but to claim her fully. Maya stood on shaking legs. What happens to me during these tests? You suffer, Morgana said bluntly. Every moment he fights the bond, you'll feel it. Every test he endures, you'll endure with him, in your own way. It's designed to be unbearable for both parties to prove whether the rejection is truly willed or merely feared. This is madness, the elder protested. The trial hasn't been invoked in over a century. The last Alpha who attempted it died on the 3rd test. Yes, I know the histories. Morgana's voice was ice. But Kyle is determined. The first test begins at moonrise tonight. Until then, the human stays here. She turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I hope he succeeds. A human Luna would destroy everything our pack has rebuilt. When she was gone, Maya sank back onto the bed, her hands trembling. Through the bond, she could feel Kyle's resolution like a wall of stone, immovable, absolute. He would break this connection between them or die trying. The elder placed a weathered hand on her shoulder. There's something you should know about the trial of severance. It requires the participation of both parties. You'll have to choose, Maya. You can submit to the tests and allow him to try breaking the bond. Or you can fight back. Fight for the connection the moon created. How can I fight for something I don't understand with someone who doesn't want me? The old wolf's eyes held ancient sympathy. That's the question every participant in the trial must answer. But know this, the bond wouldn't exist if it wasn't meant to. The moon doesn't make mistakes, even when we can't see its wisdom. He left her alone with the rising sun and the growing certainty that by moonrise, everything would change again. And somewhere in the northern mountains, an Alpha prepared for war against fate itself. They came for her as the sun began its descent toward the mountain peaks. Not the guards this time, but 3 women in ceremonial robes marked with symbols that matched the ones now etched into Maya's skin. They didn't speak as they led her from the holding house, down a winding path that cut deeper into pack territory than she'd yet seen. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. Through the bond, she could feel Kale's presence growing stronger. He was returning, drawing closer with each step she took. The connection between them pulled taut like a rope about to snap, vibrating with tension that made her teeth ache. The path opened into a circular arena carved from natural stone, surrounded by towering pines that blocked out the dying light. Torches blazed at intervals around the circle's perimeter, and the entire pack seemed to have gathered hundreds of faces watching from the shadows, silent and expectant. In the center of the arena stood Kale. Maya's breath stuttered. He'd returned to human form, dressed in simple black clothes that emphasized the predatory grace of his movements. But he looked different from the controlled Alpha who'd walked past her at the ceremony. His dark hair was wild, his jaw shadowed with stubble, his ice-bright eyes rimmed with exhaustion. He looked like a man who'd spent the last day and night fighting a war inside his own skin. He didn't look at her as she entered the circle. The elder stepped forward, his voice carrying across the arena. The trial of severance has been invoked. 3 tests stand between acceptance and freedom. The first, the test of will, requires both parties to stand within the sacred circle while the bond is challenged. The Alpha must maintain complete emotional separation while the mate stands before him. No acknowledgement, no connection, no surrender to what the moon has written. Morgana appeared at the circle's edge, holding a ceremonial bowl that steamed with something that smelled of sage and copper. The incense will amplify the bond's effects. Every emotion, every instinct, every pull between them will intensify until it becomes unbearable. If the Alpha can maintain his rejection for the span of 1 complete hour without faltering, the first test is passed. Maya understood then. This wasn't just about Kale's willpower, it was about forcing them both to endure the full weight of a connection being actively denied. She would feel every moment of his rejection as if he were physically pushing her away, over and over, for 60 minutes. And if he falters? Someone called from the crowd. Then the bond strengthens, the elder said quietly. And the trial ends in failure. Kale finally looked at Maya, and the impact of his gaze nearly drove her to her knees. Up close, with the bond singing between them, she could see past the icy exterior to the chaos underneath, fear and longing and fury all twisted together so tightly, she couldn't tell where one emotion ended and another began. You can refuse the trial, he said, his voice rough as gravel. You can walk away from this. They can't force you to participate. Maya lifted her chin, surprised by her own steadiness. And then what? We stay connected but suffering? You keep running while I'm locked in that cabin? This doesn't end unless we face it. Something flickered across his expression, respect, maybe, or regret. I'm going to hurt you, he said quietly. The rejection will feel like. It won't be kind. Nothing about this has been kind. Maya stepped closer, watching him tense like a wolf preparing to bolt. Do what you have to do, Alpha. I'm not afraid of you. That was a lie. She was terrified, but she'd be damned if she'd let him see it. Morgana lit the incense. Thick, sweet smoke began to fill the circle, and Maya felt the bond immediately surge to life like a living thing awakening. Every nerve in her body became aware of Kyle, the rise and fall of his chest, the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands clenched and unclenched at his sides. The elder began to chant in the old language, marking time. Kale closed his eyes and began to build his walls. Maya felt it like a physical blow, the sudden, deliberate severing of the thin threads of connection that had formed between them. He was pushing her out, refusing every instinct that told him to move closer, to touch, to claim what the moon had marked as his. Pain lanced through her chest. Not sharp, but deep and hollow, like something essential was being carved away. She gasped, pressing a hand to her sternum, and saw Kale's jaw clench in response. He felt it too. Every moment of rejection cost him just as much as it cost her. The minutes crawled past. The incense grew thicker, making the bond pulse stronger, demanding acknowledgement. Maya could feel everything now. His thundering heartbeat, his ragged breathing, the desperate control he was exerting over instincts that screamed at him to protect, to cherish, to keep her safe. And underneath it all, she felt his memories bleeding through the cracks in his armor. A young girl's laughter, cut short. A woman's hand going cold in his grip. A father's last words. Protect the pack, even from yourself. Tears streaked down Maya's face. Not from the pain of rejection, but from the devastating weight of Kale's grief. He wasn't fighting the bond because he didn't want her, he was fighting it because everyone he'd ever loved had been torn away. And he couldn't survive losing someone again. Kale, she whispered, knowing he could hear her even across the circle. I see you. His eyes snapped open, meeting hers, and for one fragile moment, his walls crumbled. The bond surged forward like a dam breaking, flooding the space between them with recognition and need and something that felt terrifyingly close to belonging. Kale took an involuntary step toward her, his hand reaching out, his expression raw and unguarded. Then he caught himself, forced himself still, slammed his walls back into place with such violence that Maya cried out from the impact of being shut out again. But the damage was done. 30 minutes remain, the elder announced, his voice heavy with something that might have been pity. Kale stood rigid, his control absolute once more. But Maya had felt the truth in that one unguarded moment. He didn't want to break the bond. He was just more afraid of accepting it than he was of anything else in the world. And somehow, that knowledge hurt worse than any rejection could. 23 minutes left. Maya's legs shook from the effort of remaining upright. The incense had grown so thick she could barely see Kale through the haze, but she didn't need to see him. She could feel every inch of the distance he was forcing between them, every deliberate wall he erected against the pull that wanted to draw them together. Her skin felt too tight, her lungs struggling to draw breath. This was worse than physical pain. This was being denied at a fundamental level, being told by the universe that she was meant for someone who would rather tear himself apart than accept her. Through the bond, she felt Kale's struggle intensifying. His wolf was clawing at his control, furious at being restrained, desperate to claim what belonged to them. She could sense the animal consciousness beneath his human reason primal, possessive, and completely unconcerned with curses or fear or the memory of loss. The wolf wanted its mate, and Kale was using every ounce of his alpha strength to keep it caged. 15 minutes, the elder called. Someone in the crowd shifted, a whisper of movement. Maya caught a glimpse of the girls from the offering ceremony, their painted faces twisted with vindictive satisfaction as they watched her suffer. Behind them, the scarred council member watched with troubled eyes, while Morgana's expression remained cold and approving. Maya's vision blurred. She swayed, and immediately felt Kale's alarm spike through the bond before he crushed it down. He was monitoring her even as he rejected her, unable to completely sever the instinct to protect. "You don't have to prove anything," she said, her voice barely audible over the chanting. "I already know you're strong enough to endure this." Kale's hands clenched until his knuckles went white, but he didn't respond, didn't acknowledge her words. The rejection was a physical force now, pressing against her chest like a hand trying to push her heart out of rhythm. Then something changed. A ripple of unease passed through the watching crowd. The torches flickered despite the still air, and Maya felt it, a presence at the edge of the territory, something dark and wrong and watching. Kale felt it too. His eyes snapped toward the forest, his entire body going on alert. For a moment, his concentration wavered, his walls thinning as alpha instincts overrode everything else. The bond rushed to fill the gap, and Maya gasped as emotions poured through, not just Kale's anymore, but fragments of pack awareness, the collective sense of threat that ran through every wolf in the arena. Someone was out there, someone who didn't belong. Kale's head whipped back toward the elder. "End this. Now. The trial cannot be interrupted," Morgana said sharply. "You invoked it, Alpha. You must see it through. There's a breach. Then your pack will handle it while you complete what you started." Morgana's smile was razor thin. "Or are you looking for an excuse to fail?" Kale's fury blazed through the bond so intensely that Maya staggered. He was trapped, bound by the laws he'd invoked, unable to leave the circle without forfeiting the trial, forced to maintain his rejection while something potentially dangerous prowled his territory. 10 minutes, the elder said quietly. The presence at the border grew stronger. Maya could feel it now, even without the bond, a cold, creeping wrongness that made her skin crawl. Several wolves broke from the crowd, shifting mid-run as they raced toward the perimeter. Shouts echoed from the forest. Kale was vibrating with the need to act, to lead, to protect. His control was fracturing under the dual assault of the bond and his alpha responsibilities. Maya watched him wage war with himself, saw the exact moment when instinct began winning over will. 8 minutes. A howl split the night, not celebratory or communicative, but a warning, cut short too quickly. The crowd's murmurs turned to alarm. "Something's wrong," the scarred council member said, moving toward the circle's edge. That was Marcus. He wouldn't sound the alarm unless... An explosion of sound and fury erupted from the forest. Snarls, screams, the crash of bodies meeting. The scent hit the arena a moment later. Blood and something chemical, acrid and unnatural. "Rogues," someone shouted. Armed with silver and wolfsbane, Kale's walls shattered completely. The bond slammed into Maya with the force of a tidal wave, his rage, his fear, his absolute need to defend his pack. She felt his wolf tear free of his control, felt the shift ripple through him, even as he stood locked in the sacred circle. "The trial," Morgana started. "Damn the trial." Kale's voice was barely human, resonant with alpha command that made every wolf in the clearing drop their gaze. "My pack is under attack. The trial is forfeit." "Then you've failed," Morgana said triumphantly. "The bond stands. The moon's choice is, I don't care." Kale was already moving toward the forest, already issuing commands through the pack link that Maya could somehow hear echoing at the edges of her consciousness. "Marcus, report. Daria, take the east flank. Someone get the young ones to the safe house." He stopped mid-stride, his head snapping back toward Maya with an expression of sudden, terrible realization. The bond wasn't just intact anymore. It was active, fully opened by his broken concentration. And through it, Maya was hearing pack communications, feeling the collective awareness of dozens of wolves, sensing the layout of the territory as if she'd lived there her entire life. She was connected to the pack itself. "That's impossible," the elder breathed. "She's human. She can't access the pack consciousness without the claiming bite. Without..." Another howl, closer now. A rogue broke through the tree line, a massive wolf with matted fur and eyes that reflected red in the torchlight, foam flecking its muzzle. It wasn't alone. 3 more emerged behind it, moving with the jerky coordination of wolves who'd been driven mad or drugged or both. The crowd scattered. Kale shifted in a heartbeat, his black wolf form larger and more terrifying than anything Maya had imagined. He placed himself between the rogues and the fleeing pack members, a growl rumbling from his chest that Maya felt in her bones. But the rogues weren't looking at Kale. They were looking at Maya, all four pairs of red reflecting eyes locked onto her with singular, unnatural focus. As one, they lunged not at the Alpha, not at the guards, but straight toward the human girl standing alone in the circle, marked with silver symbols that seemed to glow brighter in the presence of danger. Kale's roar shook the arena as he intercepted the first rogue mid-leap, and Maya, connected to the pack consciousness through a bond that shouldn't exist, heard a voice whisper through the collective awareness, cold, amused, and achingly familiar, though she'd never heard it before. "Found you, little Luna. Let's see if your Alpha can keep you alive long enough to matter." Maya had never seen anything move as fast as Kale did in wolf form. He was a blur of black fur and lethal grace, intercepting the first rogue with bone-crushing force. They collided mid-air with a sound like thunder, tumbling across the stone arena in a tangle of snapping jaws and raking claws. The other three rogues split formation, two circling toward Maya from different angles, while the third engaged the guards who'd rushed forward to help. Terror locked Maya's muscles. She'd never felt so helpless, so utterly human, as she did watching wolves the size of bears close in on her with murder in their red-stained eyes. Then the bond blazed to life with Kale's desperate command, "Run." The word echoed through her mind with alpha authority that bypassed rational thought and spoke directly to survival instinct. Maya's legs finally obeyed, carrying her toward the edge of the circle, just as the second rogue's claws scraped the stone where she'd been standing. She didn't make it far. The third rogue cut off her escape, herding her back toward the center of the arena. Its muzzle was scarred, one ear torn to ribbons, and the chemical smell rolling off its fur made her eyes water. Not just wolfsbane, something else. Something that explained the unnatural red gleam in its gaze. Silver dust mixed with nightshade extract. The elder's voice called out, sharp with alarm. "They've been poisoned. They're not in control of themselves." That should have been reassuring. These wolves weren't choosing to attack her. But it didn't change the fact that, poisoned or not, their teeth would tear through her flesh just as easily. Kale finished the first rogue with ruthless efficiency, his jaws closing around its throat until it went limp. He whirled toward Maya, but the scarred rogue was already lunging, its trajectory aimed straight at her exposed back. Maya heard someone scream, realized distantly it was her own voice, and then the world tilted sideways as something massive slammed into her from the side. Not the rogue. Kale. He'd crossed the distance impossibly fast, shoving her out of harm's way even as the scarred rogue's claws raked across his shoulder. Blood sprayed, black in the torchlight. Kale's snarl of pain reverberated through the bond so intensely that Maya felt it like a knife between her ribs. She hit the ground hard, the breath knocked from her lungs. Above her, Kale stood over her fallen form, all four legs braced, his body forming a protective barrier between her and the circling rogues. Blood matted his shoulder, but he didn't waver. Through the bond, Maya felt his thoughts with crystal clarity. Mine, my mate, my pack, touch her and die. The remaining rogues seemed to hesitate, some flicker of pack instinct recognizing an alpha's claim even through the poison clouding their minds. But then that cold voice whispered through the pack consciousness again, and the rogues' eyes blazed brighter. Such devotion, such predictable heroism. Let's test how far it goes. The rogues attacked in unison. Kale met them with controlled violence, his movements precise despite his injury. He caught one by the throat, used its momentum to throw it into the second, buying precious seconds. But he couldn't fight three at once while protecting Maya. The angles were wrong, the space too confined. One of the rogues broke through his defense, its jaws snapping inches from Maya's face. Then the scarred council member was there in wolf form, gray and battle-worn, but fast intercepting the attack. More pack wolves poured into the arena, a coordinated response to their alpha's distress. The tide turned quickly after that, the rogues overwhelmed by sheer numbers. But Maya barely registered the fight's conclusion. Her attention was locked on Kale, who'd shifted back to human form the moment the immediate threat passed. He knelt beside her, his shoulder still bleeding, his hands hovering over her body as if afraid to touch her. "Are you hurt?" His voice was raw, nothing like the cold alpha who'd rejected her an hour ago. Did any of them? "I'm fine." Maya pushed herself up on shaking arms, her eyes going to his shoulder. The wounds were deep, the edges blackened. "You're not. That's silver poisoning. It'll heal." His hands finally made contact, cupping her face with a gentleness that contradicted everything about the violence she'd just witnessed. "You're sure? No bites? No scratches?" Maya nodded, unable to form words. Up close, she could see that his ice-bright eyes were fractured with gold, his wolf still too close to the surface, still riding the edge of protective fury. "Alpha." Morgana's voice cut through the moment like a blade. She stood at the circle's edge, her expression unreadable. "The rogues are subdued. Two dead. One escaped into the forest. And this one? She gestured to the scarred rogue, now pinned by 3 pack wolves. This one has something carved into its flesh. A message. Kyle released Maya reluctantly, rising to examine the captive rogue. Maya followed on unsteady legs, staying close to his side. The bond hummed between them, no longer rejected, no longer denied, but not yet fully accepted, either existing in some uncertain space that felt more fragile than either extreme. The scarred rogue had stopped struggling, its red gleaming eyes slowly fading to natural amber as the poison worked its way out of its system. Across its flank, carved with deliberate precision, were symbols that made the elder go pale. The broken chain pack, he whispered. They were destroyed 20 years ago for practicing blood magic. There shouldn't be anyone left who knows these markings. Someone knows, Kale said grimly. And someone orchestrated this attack specifically to target Maya during the trial. His eyes cut to Morgana. Convenient timing, wouldn't you say? Morgana's expression remained neutral. Are you accusing me of conspiring with rogues, Alpha? Of using blood magic against my own pack? I'm saying someone knew exactly when and where we'd be vulnerable tonight. Someone who benefits from chaos. Kale's voice dropped to something dangerous. Someone who's never approved of the moon's choice. Before Morgana could respond, the captive rogue began to convulse. Foam bubbled from its muzzle, and the chemical smell intensified. The pack wolves holding it jumped back as the rogue's body went rigid. Fail-safe, the elder said. They poisoned it with a delayed compound. Whatever it knows dies with it. They all watched helplessly as the rogue shuddered one final time and went still. In the terrible silence that followed, Maya felt that cold presence withdraw from the pack consciousness, like smoke dissipating. But not before it left one final whisper that only she seemed to hear. The trial was never the real test, little Luna. The real test is whether your alpha can keep you alive when everyone around him wants you dead. Sleep well, if you can. Kale's hand found hers, his grip fierce and possessive. You're staying with me tonight, he said. Not a request, but a command. I'm not letting you out of my sight until we figure out who's behind this. Maya should have argued. Should have demanded answers, independence, anything but blind compliance. Instead, she tightened her grip on his hand and nodded. Because whoever had orchestrated tonight's attack was still out there, watching and waiting. And she had the terrible feeling that this was only the beginning. Kale's home sat at the highest point of pack territory, a sprawling cabin built from dark timber and stone that seemed to grow naturally from the mountainside. Maya had expected something cold and austere, matching the alpha who'd spent a day trying to reject her. Instead, the interior was warm, lived in, with books stacked on tables, a fireplace that dominated one wall, and windows that offered a view of the entire valley below. Sit, Kyle said, gesturing to the couch as he disappeared into what she assumed was a bathroom. I need to deal with this shoulder before it gets worse. Maya remained standing, too wired from adrenaline to relax. Through the windows, she could see pack members moving through the territory below. Patrols doubled, lights blazing in every dwelling. The attack had put everyone on edge. She touched the mark on her collarbone absently. It had been pulsing steadily since the fight, a rhythm that matched Kale's heartbeat. The bond was still wide open between them, his emotions bleeding into hers and vice versa. She could feel his pain from the silver wounds, his fury at the attack, and underneath it all, a guilt so profound it made her chest ache. He blamed himself. For the trial, for her being targeted, for everything. Kyle emerged from the bathroom shirtless, his shoulder now bandaged, but still seeping blood through the white gauze. The silver would slow his healing for hours yet. He caught her staring and something flickered across his face. Awareness, perhaps, or self-consciousness. I should have ended the trial the moment I sensed the breach, he said, moving to the kitchen and pulling out a bottle of whiskey. He didn't bother with a glass, just took a long drink straight from the bottle. Should have trusted my instincts instead of my pride. You were trying to protect me, Maya said quietly. From the bond, from becoming a target. It didn't work, but I understand why you tried. Kale laughed, sharp and bitter. Protect you? I painted a target on your back the moment the mark appeared. Every wolf with ambition now sees you as a weakness to exploit. Every enemy of this pack sees you as leverage. He took another drink. I should have let you run when I told you to. Should have broken the bond no matter the cost. Can't break what's already formed. Maya moved closer, drawn by the rawness in his voice. The elder said the mark can't be undone. There are ways, painful ways, dangerous ways. Kale set the bottle down with deliberate care. Ways that would spare you from being dragged into pack politics and ancient vendettas. And hell. He stopped, his jaw clenching. You don't belong in this world, Maya. You should be living your normal human life, not hiding in an alpha's den while rogues carve threats into their own flesh. Maybe I don't belong, Maya agreed. But I'm here anyway. The moon put me here. Or fate. Or whatever you want to call it. She was close enough now to see the flecks of gold still swirling in his eyes. And for what it's worth, I don't think you really want me gone. The bond won't let you lie to me anymore. Kale's expression cracked. What I want doesn't matter. Everyone I've ever... He cut himself off, turning away. You felt my memories during the trial. You know what happens to people I care about. I felt your grief, Maya corrected. And your fear. But Kale, that curse killed your family 7 years ago. If it's still active, why hasn't it touched you? Why are you still alive? Because I'm not the target, I'm the weapon. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. The curse was designed to destroy everything the Alpha loves, to make him watch as everyone around him dies. It feeds on bonds, on connections. As long as I stay alone, stay isolated, it has nothing to feed on. You're not alone. You have an entire pack. Pack bonds are different. Necessary. The curse can't touch those without destroying its own purpose. Kale finally turned to face her, and the devastation in his eyes nearly broke her. But a mate bond? That's the ultimate connection. The strongest, most vulnerable point. If I accept this bond fully, if I claim you the way every instinct is screaming at me to, his hands clenched into fists, I might as well sign your death warrant myself. Maya absorbed this, pieces of the puzzle finally clicking into place. Is that what tonight was about? Someone testing whether the curse is still active? Maybe. Or maybe they're just taking advantage of the chaos. Kale ran a hand through his hair, exhaustion evident in every line of his body. The broken chain pack practiced blood magic before they were destroyed. If someone's resurrected their techniques, if they know about the curse. He trailed off, the implications hanging heavy in the air. Through the bond, Maya felt his warring impulses, the desperate need to send her away somewhere safe, battling against the absolute certainty that letting her out of his sight would drive him insane. The mate bond wasn't gentle about its demands. What if the curse is gone? She asked. What if your family broke it when they died, and you've been punishing yourself for nothing? And what if it's not? Kale's voice turned sharp. What if I give in to this bond and you're dead within a week? Within a day? Could you take that risk? It's my risk to take. No. The word came out as a growl. You don't understand what you're saying. You don't know what it means to be claimed by an alpha, to be bound to the pack consciousness, to have every wolf in this territory instinctively protect and defer to you. You'd be giving up your humanity, your freedom, my choice? Maya interrupted. Because it sounds like you're trying to make this decision for me. Kyle stared at her, something like wonder mixing with his frustration. You should be terrified. Running. Not standing here arguing with me about agency. I am terrified, Maya admitted. I'm absolutely terrified. But I'm also angry and confused and connected to you in a way I can't explain or escape. So maybe instead of deciding what's best for me, you could try talking to me like an equal. The silence stretched between them, charged with everything unsaid. Then Kale moved, closing the distance in 2 strides and cupping her face with hands that trembled slightly. I don't know how to do this, he said, his forehead dropping to rest against hers. I don't know how to want something this badly, and still be willing to let it go. Maya's hands came up to grip his wrists, feeling his pulse race beneath her fingers. Then don't let go. Not yet. Not until we know what we're really fighting. Through the bond, she felt his resolve waver, felt the moment his control began to slip. His thumb traced the mark on her collarbone with reverent gentleness, and the touch sent electricity singing through her veins. Maya, he breathed, her name a warning and a prayer. She tilted her face up, her lips a breath away from his. I'm not running. Kale. You should. I know. He kissed her. The kiss shattered every wall Kale had built between them. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate and claiming, and edged with the kind of hunger that came from denying yourself something essential for too long. Maya gasped against his mouth, and he swallowed the sound, one hand tangling in her hair while the other pulled her flesh against him. The bond ignited like wildfire. Every emotion, every sensation magnified tenfold. Maya could feel Kale's wolf surging beneath his skin, triumphant and possessive, finally allowed to claim what belonged to them. She could feel his fear warring with his need, his guilt crashing against waves of rightness that felt ordained by something far older than either of them. And underneath it all, she felt his love raw and new and terrifying in its intensity. He broke the kiss abruptly, his breathing ragged, his eyes blazing full gold now. We can't. I shouldn't have. Maya pulled him back down, silencing his protests with her own kiss. She didn't have words for what she felt. couldn't explain how the bond had woven itself so completely through her soul in less than 2 days. But she knew that pulling away now would hurt them both worse than any curse ever could. Kale groaned, the sound vibrating through his chest and into hers. His control was fracturing, the alpha restraint giving way to something more primal. His lips traced down her jaw to her neck, pausing over the mark on her collarbone. "If I bite you here," he whispered against her skin, "there's no going back. The bond becomes permanent. You become Luna. You become mine in every way that matters to my kind. Then bite me." Maya's voice came out steady despite her racing heart. "You don't understand what you're asking. I understand that we're stronger together than apart. I understand that whoever attacked tonight wants us divided, afraid, rejecting what the moon gave us." Her hands fisted in his hair, forcing him to meet her eyes. "I understand that I'm tired of being afraid of something that feels this right." Kale's expression cracked open, showing her every vulnerable thing he usually kept hidden. "If the curse takes you, then we fight it. Together." Maya traced the line of his jaw, feeling the tension there. "But we don't give up before the battle even starts." For a long moment, Kale just stared at her, his chest heaving with each breath. Then something shifted in his expression, a decision made. A line crossed. He lowered his head to her collarbone, his lips brushing the silver mark with devastating gentleness. "Mine," he whispered against her skin. His teeth grazed the mark, and Maya's entire world exploded into sensation. It wasn't painful. It was overwhelming, a rush of connection that went beyond physical, beyond emotional, into something that felt like their souls recognizing each other. She felt herself pulled into the pack consciousness fully now, no longer an observer but a participant. Dozens of minds brushed against hers in greeting, acknowledgement, acceptance. Luna, their Luna, the Alpha's mate. Kale's bite deepened, sealing the bond with ancient magic that predated language. Maya cried out, her body arching against his, as power flooded through her. His power shared freely, marking her as protected, as cherished, as claimed beyond any doubt. When he finally pulled back, his lips were stained with a trace of her blood, and his eyes held a fierce satisfaction that was entirely wolf. The mark on her collarbone had changed, the silver symbols now intertwined with gold that matched Kale's eyes. "I can feel them," Maya gasped, one hand pressed to her chest. "The pack, all of them. It's like voices singing in harmony. You're part of us now." Kale's voice was rough with emotion. "Part of me. Forever." Maya opened her mouth to respond, but the words died as pain lanced through her skull with blinding intensity. She screamed. It felt like knives carving into her brain, like her mind was being torn apart from the inside. Through the bond, she felt Kale's panic, his desperate attempts to reach her, but the pain was a wall between them, and then she saw it. A vision, forced into her consciousness by something dark and malevolent. A ritual circle drawn in blood, candles made from human fat, and at the center, a woman with silver hair and cold eyes, chanting words in a language that made Maya's ears bleed. Morgana. The vision shifted, showing her fragments, the scarred rogue being marked with symbols, vials of poison being prepared. A map of pack territory with Kale's home circled in red. And over it all, that cold voice she'd heard during the attack. "Did you think accepting the bond would save you? Foolish girl. You just made yourself the perfect sacrifice." Maya collapsed, Kale catching her before she hit the floor. The vision faded, but the message remained crystal clear. Tonight's attack wasn't meant to kill her. It was meant to force Kale to complete the bond. And completing the bond had just activated something far worse than rogue wolves. "Maya." Kale's voice cut through the lingering pain. "What happened? What did you see?" She struggled to focus on his face, her head still spinning. "Morgana. She's the one behind the attacks. And the bond, Kale. Completing the bond was part of her plan. We just triggered something." Kale's expression went deadly still. "What kind of something?" Before Maya could answer, every window in the cabin exploded inward. Glass shattered across the floor as 5 wolves crashed through simultaneously, not rogues this time, but pack members Maya recognized from the arena. Their eyes glowed with the same red gleam the poisoned rogues had worn, and they moved with coordinated precision toward where Kyle and Maya stood. "Compulsion magic," Kale snarled, placing himself between Maya and the attackers. "They're being controlled." More wolves poured through the broken windows. Too many to fight, especially with Kale still injured from earlier. Through the pack consciousness, Maya felt the rest of the territory in chaos, wolves turning on each other, friends attacking friends, all of them wearing that same red gleam in their eyes. "She's taking control of the entire pack," Maya breathed in horror. Kale's hand found hers, his grip fierce. "Then we run. Now." They burst through the back door as the controlled wolves tore apart the living room behind them. The forest swallowed them immediately, dark and treacherous, offering the only escape from pack members who now hunted their own alpha and his newly claimed mate. And somewhere in the darkness, Morgana's laughter echoed through the pack consciousness like poison. Run, little alpha. Run, little Luna. But you can't escape what's already inside you. The curse was never about death. It was about control. And now that you've completed the bond, you belong to me. They ran through the forest like hunted prey, branches tearing at their clothes, roots threatening to trip them with every step. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit grew louder, the controlled pack members crashing through underbrush with single-minded determination. Cale pulled Maya deeper into the woods, his hand locked around her wrist like an anchor. Even injured, even hunted by his own people, he moved with the fluid grace of someone who knew every inch of this territory. But Maya could feel his desperation through the bond, his mind racing through options that all ended badly. The border, he gasped, pulling her down a steep embankment. If we can reach the wildlands, pack compulsion won't work there. It's neutral territory. How far? Maya's lungs burned, her human endurance already flagging. 2 miles. Maybe less. Cale glanced back, his eyes flashing gold in the moonlight. Can you make it? Maya nodded, though her legs screamed otherwise. Through the pack consciousness now twisted and corrupted by Morgana's control, she could feel the wolves closing in. 15, maybe 20 of them, all singularly focused on capturing their alpha and his mate. A howl split the night, closer than before. Cale cursed and changed direction, pulling Maya toward a rocky outcropping. In here, quick. They squeezed into a narrow crevice between boulders, the space barely wide enough for both of them. Cale positioned himself at the opening, his body shielding Maya from view, his breathing controlled despite their desperate sprint. The controlled wolves streamed past their hiding spot moments later, their red gleaming eyes scanning the forest but missing the shadowed crevice. Maya held her breath, pressing against Cale's back, feeling his heartbeat thundering against her palms. When the last wolf passed, Cale waited another 30 seconds before moving. They'll circle back when they lose our trail. We have maybe 5 minutes. They emerged from the crevice and ran again, this time with Cale setting a more sustainable pace. The forest began to change around them, the trees growing wilder, older, the underbrush thicker, pack territory giving way to something untamed. I don't understand, Maya panted. How is Morgana controlling the entire pack? I thought only the alpha could. She's not using the pack bond. She's using blood magic. Cale's voice was tight with fury. The broken chain pack specialized in compulsion rituals. They'd mark their victims with symbols carved into flesh, then activate the marks through sacrifice. He jumped over a fallen log, pulling Maya with him. She must have been marking pack members for weeks. Months, maybe. But why? What does she gain from this? Power, control, everything an alpha has without the responsibility. Cale's jaw clenched. She was never happy with the council's decision to make me alpha after my father died. She wanted the position for herself. Or for her bloodline. But pack law was clear: the alpha's son inherits unless he's unfit. They broke through a line of ancient oaks, and suddenly the forest opened into a clearing that felt different, older, charged with wild magic that made Maya's skin prickle. Moonlight poured down unfiltered, illuminating standing stones arranged in a circle that predated the pack by centuries. The border, Cale said, pulling her toward the stones. Once we cross into the wildlands, pack magic can't. He stopped abruptly, his entire body going rigid. Maya felt it through the bond, a heartbeat, later agony, white-hot and consuming, as if something was trying to tear Cale apart from the inside. He collapsed to his knees with a strangled sound, his hands clutching his head. Kyle! Maya dropped beside him, her hands on his shoulders. What's happening? She's activating something. His voice was barely recognizable through the pain. The claiming bite. Maya, when I bit you when we completed the bond, she must have woven compulsion magic into the ritual itself. Horror flooded through Maya as understanding dawned. She wanted us to complete the bond. It wasn't a mistake, it was the plan all along. Cale's eyes met hers, gold bleeding to red at the edges. She's trying to control me through our bond. Through you. His hands gripped her arms with bruising force. Maya, you need to run. Cross the border. Get as far from me as... No. Maya's voice was steel. I'm not leaving you. I can feel her in my head. In our bond. Cale's voice broke. If she takes control of me, I'll hurt you. I won't be able to stop myself. Through their connection, Maya felt Morgana's presence like oil spreading through water. Dark, invasive, wrong. The older woman was using the fresh bond as a doorway, trying to puppeteer the alpha through his connection to his newly claimed mate. But Maya also felt something else. The bond wasn't just a weakness, it was a connection that went both ways. If Morgana could reach Cale through Maya, Then maybe. Hold on to me, Maya said, pulling Kale's face up to meet her eyes. Don't fight it alone. Let me help. You can't, you're human. I'm your mate. Maya pressed her forehead to his, diving into the bond with reckless determination. And that means something. She felt herself fall into the connection between them, deeper than she'd gone before. It was like plunging into an ocean, vast and overwhelming and filled with currents she didn't understand. She could feel Kale's consciousness struggling against Morgana's invasive presence, his wolf snarling and snapping at chains made of blood magic. And she could feel Morgana herself, cold and ancient, and absolutely certain of her victory. Foolish girl. You have no power here. You're nothing but a human who got lucky with a bond you don't deserve. Maya ignored her, focusing instead on the golden threads that connected her to Kale. The bond the moon had created, pure and unbreakable beneath all of Morgana's corruption. She wrapped herself around those threads, reinforcing them with everything she had. Her will, her choice, her absolute refusal to let anyone take Kale from her. He's mine, she threw back at Morgana. The moon chose us. You can't break what's already forged. The bond flared between them, silver and gold intertwining, burning away the dark tendrils of compulsion magic like sunlight through shadow. Kale gasped, his eyes clearing, the red fading back to pure gold. Morgana's scream of rage echoed through the pack consciousness. And then, impossibly, Maya felt something shift. The pack bonds, all of them, suddenly recognized her not as an outsider but as Luna, as their alpha's mate, as someone with the right to command. Power flooded through her, ancient and instinctive. She didn't know how she knew the words, but they came anyway, rolling off her tongue in a language she'd never learned. By Moon's right and Bond's claim, I sever your hold. By Alpha's mate and Luna's voice, I cast you out. The compulsion magic shattered like glass. Throughout the territory, Maya felt pack members stumbling as they regained control of themselves, the red gleam fading from their eyes. Felt Morgana's fury as her carefully laid plans crumbled in an instant, and felt something else, something dark and hungry stirring in the distance, awakened by the massive working of power. The curse. The real curse, not Morgana's imitation. It had felt Maya use Luna magic, and now it was coming for them both. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in an instant. Maya's breath misted in the air as frost began creeping across the standing stones, spreading like a living thing. The moonlight dimmed, shadows pooling in the clearing with unnatural density, and through the bond, she felt Kale's recognition, and his terror. No, he whispered, pulling Maya to her feet. No, not now, not like this. What is it? But Maya already knew. She could feel it in the way the wild magic recoiled, in the way every instinct screamed at her to run. This was different from Morgana's blood magic. This was older, hungrier, and far more personal. The curse that had killed Kale's family had finally found a new target. It's been dormant, Kale said, his voice hollow, waiting. It needs a Luna to activate fully, someone bound to the Alpha through claiming. That's why it never touched me. I was alone, isolated. But now, his hands tightened on her shoulders. Maya, you using Luna magic just rang a dinner bell for something that feeds on exactly that kind of power. The shadows coalesced into a shape vaguely humanoid but wrong, its edges bleeding darkness into the air around it. Where it touched the ground, the grass withered and died. Its face was featureless except for eyes that burned with cold fire. A curse-given form, a spell made flesh. Alpha's mate, it whispered, its voice like wind through a crypt. Alpha's love, Alpha's weakness. Finally, after 7 long years, the bloodline offers itself again. Run, Kale commanded, pushing Maya toward the border. Cross into the wildlands. It can't follow you there, the magic is too different, too chaotic. I'm not leaving you. Maya planted her feet, refusing to budge. This thing killed my entire family. Kale's voice cracked. My father tried to fight it. My mother tried to banish it. Neither of them stood a chance. It won't stop until everyone I love is dead or I am. Then we die together. Maya turned to face the shadow creature, her heart hammering but her resolve absolute. Because I'm not running. Not from this. Not from anything. The curse laughed, a sound like breaking bones. Such loyalty, such devotion. It will make your death so much sweeter. It lunged. Kale shifted mid-leap, his black wolf form intercepting the curse before it could reach Maya. The impact sent them both tumbling across the clearing. Where the curse's touch landed on Kale's fur, his skin blistered and blackened, wounds that wouldn't heal spreading like poison. Maya screamed his name, feeling every moment of his pain through the bond. The curse was designed specifically to harm the Alpha bloodline. Every strike it landed carried the weight of ancestral hatred, generations of resentment made manifest. Kale fought with desperate ferocity, but he was already injured from the earlier attacks, already exhausted from running. The curse had the advantage of patience. It had waited 7 years for this moment, and it wouldn't be denied now. Your alpha falls, the curse hissed, pressing Kale into the ground with impossible strength. Just as his father fell, just as they all fall. And when he is gone, I will take you slowly, little Luna. I will feast on your connection to the pack, drain every drop of magic from your bond, until there is nothing left but— Shut up, Maya snarled. Power erupted from her in a wave of silver gold light. She didn't know what she was doing, didn't understand the magic flowing through her veins. But the bond recognized what she needed, and the pack consciousness still connected to her, still acknowledging her as Luna surged to meet her call. Every wolf in the territory felt it. The Luna's summons, ancient, instinctive, impossible to ignore. And they answered. Power flooded into Maya from dozens of sources, pack members offering their strength freely, their magic flowing through the bonds that connected them all. It wasn't blood magic or compulsion. It was freely given. A pack protecting its Luna, the same way she'd just protected them from Morgana's control. Maya channeled that power into the bond she shared with Kale, wrapping him in protective light that forced the curse to release him. He scrambled backward, his wolf form bleeding from a dozen wounds. But alive. The curse turned its attention fully to Maya now, recognizing her as the true threat. Impossible, it hissed. You are human. You have no magic of your own. You cannot. I have a pack, Maya interrupted, her voice resonating with borrowed power. I have a bond forged by the moon itself, and I have a mate worth fighting for. She stepped forward, the silver gold light intensifying around her. You might have killed his family, but you won't have him. You won't have us. The curse attacked with everything it had, shadows lashing out like whips. Maya met it with pack magic, with Luna power, with the sheer stubborn refusal to let this thing take one more person from Kale. Their powers collided in the center of the clearing, light against dark, life against death. The standing stones began to crack from the force of it. The earth trembled, and through it all, Maya held firm, drawing on reserves she didn't know she possessed. You don't understand what you're fighting, the curse snarled. I was born from a father's grief, fed by a mother's rage. I am blood debt made real. I cannot be destroyed. Maybe not, Maya gasped, her strength flagging. But you can be bound. The words came from somewhere deep, some instinct written into her DNA the moment Kale's bite had claimed her. Luna magic wasn't just about protection, it was about balance. About binding chaos, about creating order from wild power. She reached through the bond, found Kale's consciousness, and pulled him into the working with her. Together, she sent through their connection. We do this together. Kale understood instantly. His wolf form shimmered, shifting back to human, and he crossed the clearing in 3 strides to stand at her side. His hand found hers, their fingers interlacing, the mark on her collarbone blazing in answer to the one on his neck. They spoke the binding in unison. Words in the old language flowing from their lips, as if they'd known them all their lives. By Alpha's strength and Luna's grace, by Pack's will and Moon's own face, we bind what hunts, we cage what kills, and seal this curse to our combined wills. The curse shrieked as silver gold chains erupted from the ground, wrapping around its shadowy form. It fought, struggling against bonds made of pack magic and mate power, and something even older, the moon's own blessing on a union that refused to break. Maya felt the curse, trying to find purchase, trying to feed on their bond to break free. But where it had once found weakness and fear, it now found only strength and certainty. The curse couldn't feed on what wouldn't break. With a final scream of rage, the shadow creature collapsed in on itself, compressed by the binding until it was nothing more than a small, dark stone that fell to the earth with a heavy thud. Silence crashed over the clearing. Maya's legs gave out, but Kale caught her, pulling her against his chest as they both sank to their knees. Through the bond, she felt his wonder, his disbelief, his overwhelming relief. You bound it, he whispered against her hair. 7 years I've lived in fear of that thing, and you just bound it. We bound it, Maya corrected, her voice muffled against his shoulder. Together, they stayed kneeling in the clearing until the first hints of dawn painted the sky purple and gold. Maya couldn't move, didn't want to. Every muscle in her body trembled with exhaustion, the borrowed pack magic having drained her completely. But Kale's arms around her felt like the only solid thing in a world that had tilted sideways, and she wasn't ready to let go. Through the bond, she felt pack members approaching cautiously at first, then with growing confidence as they sensed the curse's absence. The elder arrived first, his ancient eyes taking in the scene with a mixture of awe and relief. The curse is bound, he said. Not a question, but a statement of fact. He picked up the dark stone carefully, wrapping it in cloth. This will need to be sealed properly, locked away where it can never be freed. But the immediate threat. He trailed off, his gaze moving between Maya and Kale. You did what 3 generations of alphas could not. Maya did it, Kyle said quietly, his hand stroking her hair with absent tenderness. I've been so afraid of the bond, so certain it would be used against us, but she turned it into our greatest weapon. More wolves emerged from the tree line, the scarred council member, several guards, and pack members who'd been freed from Morgana's compulsion. They dropped to one knee in unison, heads bowed, a gesture of respect that Maya didn't immediately understand. Luna, the scarred council member said formally, the pack acknowledges your claim, your strength, your sacrifice. Maya struggled to sit up straighter, acutely aware of her disheveled appearance, her borrowed dress torn and dirty, her bare feet bleeding from the desperate run through the forest. She didn't look like anyone's Luna. She looked like a human who'd stumbled into something far beyond her understanding and barely survived. But when she touched the pack consciousness, she felt their acceptance like a warm embrace. They'd felt her break Morgana's control. They'd given their strength freely when she'd called, and now they recognized her as one of them. Human origins be damned. What happened to Morgana? Kale asked, his voice hardening. Fled, the elder said grimly. The moment her compulsion shattered, she ran. We tracked her to the southern border, but she crossed into rival pack territory before we could apprehend her. Kale's growl rumbled through his chest. She'll come back. She's invested too much in this to simply give up. Let her try. The scarred council member's expression was fierce. She revealed herself as a traitor, used blood magic against her own pack. There's no coming back from that. If she returns, she'll face pack justice. And the pack members she marked? Maya asked, finding her voice. The ones she used for the compulsion magic? The marks are fading now that the ritual is broken. They'll heal. The elder's expression softened. You saved them, Luna. Saved all of us from being used as weapons against our own alpha. Luna. They kept calling her that, the title settling over her shoulders like a mantle she hadn't asked for but couldn't refuse. Through the bond, she felt Kale's pride mixing with his lingering concern. We should return to the main territory, Kale said, rising carefully and pulling Maya up with him. Maya needs rest, medical attention. I'm fine, Maya protested, though her legs wobbled as she stood. Kyle raised an eyebrow, then simply scooped her into his arms without warning. You just channeled enough pack magic to bind an ancient curse. You're allowed to not be fine. Maya wanted to argue, but exhaustion was creeping in fast now that the adrenaline had faded. She let her head rest against Kale's shoulder as he carried her back through the forest, surrounded by pack members who kept a respectful distance but remained close enough to protect. The journey back revealed the full extent of the night's chaos. Several buildings showed signs of the fighting that had occurred under Morgana's compulsion. Broken windows, claw marks, blood that was already being cleaned up by industrious pack members. But there was also a sense of relief in the air, of a threat finally ended after years of lurking in the shadows. Kale's cabin had been destroyed, the windows still shattered, furniture torn apart by the controlled wolves who'd attacked. He carried Maya past it without pause, heading instead toward a larger building at the territory's heart. The pack house, he explained. It's where the alpha traditionally lives. I moved out after my family died. Couldn't stand being there alone. His arms tightened around her. But I'm not alone anymore. The pack house was beautiful, all stone and timber, with a massive great room that had a fireplace tall enough to walk into. Pack members were already inside, preparing rooms, starting fires, laying out food and medical supplies. Kale carried Maya upstairs to what was clearly the alpha's suite, a sprawling room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the valley. He set her down gently on the enormous bed, then knelt to examine her cut and bleeding feet. I should have shifted and carried you in wolf form, he muttered, his touch feather-light as he cleaned the wounds. Faster? Easier on you. I liked being held by you like this, Maya admitted, seeing your face instead of your fur. Kale's hands stilled, his eyes meeting hers. I spent so long trying to prevent this moment, trying to keep you safe by keeping you away. He shook his head slowly. I was an idiot. You were scared, Maya corrected. There's a difference. I'm still scared. Kale finished bandaging her feet and sat beside her on the bed, his hand finding hers. The curse is bound, not destroyed. Morgana is still out there, and there will be others wolves who resent a human Luna, rival packs who see you as a weakness to exploit. The danger hasn't ended, Maya. It's just different now. I know. Maya squeezed his hand. But we face it together. That's what the bond means, right? We don't have to be strong enough alone, we just have to be strong enough together. Kale pulled her close, his lips brushing her temple. When did you get so wise about pack dynamics? About 5 minutes ago. Maya yawned, exhaustion finally winning. I'm mostly making it up as I go. You're doing better than making it up. Kyle shifted them both so they were lying down, Maya's head on his chest, his arms wrapped protectively around her. You're a natural, Luna. The pack already loves you. Through the bond, Maya felt the truth of his words. And underneath that, she felt something else. Kale's own love, no longer hidden or denied, flowing freely through their connection. I love you too, she whispered, giving voice to what the bond had already told him. His arms tightened. Get some rest, my Luna. When you wake up, we'll figure out the rest together. Maya's eyes drifted closed, the pack consciousness humming peacefully at the edges of her awareness. Outside the windows, the sun rose fully over the mountains, painting everything in shades of hope. She'd come to Crescent Hollow planning to stay 3 months and leave before winter. Instead, she'd found a home, a pack, and a mate who'd been worth every terrifying moment. The moon, it seemed, knew exactly what it was doing after all.